The warship broke through the clouds like a dark knife cutting through white cloth. Commander stood at the bridge window and watched the human colony below. The buildings were small and simple. The people running in the streets looked like tiny insects from this height. She had seen this same scene on 17 other worlds. They always ran, they always screamed, and they always fell. "Commander, the ground forces are ready," said her second officer from behind her. Did not turn around. Her silver-scaled skin reflected the red lights of the command console. Her crimson eyes stayed fixed on the colony called New Horizon. It was a young settlement, only 40 years old. The humans had built farms and factories and homes. They had raised children here. They had made plans for the future. None of that mattered to her. "Begin the assault," she said. Her voice was cold and flat like frozen metal. The first wave of dropships descended. Explosions bloomed across the colony like orange flowers, watched without feeling anything. This was her purpose. This was what she had been born to do. The Empire expanded across the galaxy, and she was the blade that cut the path forward. 3 hours later, she walked through the burning streets herself. Her personal guards surrounded her, 12 of the finest warriors in the fleet. She wore her ceremonial armor, black and gold with the symbols of her conquered worlds etched into the chest plate. A plasma blade hung at her hip, still clean. She rarely needed to use it. Most enemies surrendered when they saw her. The humans here did not surrender. They fought from every building, every rooftop, every shadow. Their weapons were old and weak compared to technology. Their bodies were soft and broke easily, but they would not stop. Even when their friends died beside them, the survivors kept fighting. Even when their ammunition ran out, they threw stones and swung metal pipes. Found this behavior strange. On other worlds, the conquered species always reached a point where they accepted defeat. They would kneel and beg for mercy. They would offer their resources, their labor, their loyalty. But these humans seemed broken in some fundamental way. They did not understand when they had lost. "Fascinating creatures," she said to her guard captain. "They fight as if they believe they can win." "They are stupid animals, Commander," the captain replied. "They lack the wisdom to know their place." Considered this. Perhaps he was right. Or perhaps there was something else happening here, something her people did not understand. But such questions were for scholars, not soldiers. She pushed the thought aside and continued walking. The central dome of the colony was the last stronghold. Human defenders had barricaded themselves inside, protecting the civilians who hid in the lower levels. Ordered her troops to breach the main door. The explosion shook the ground and sent dust and debris flying in all directions. She entered first, as was her right as commander. The corridor inside was dark and filled with smoke. Warning lights flashed red. Somewhere deeper in the building, she could hear humans shouting orders to each other. They were preparing for a last stand. Moved forward alone. Her guard followed at a distance as protocol demanded. A commander must prove her worth by facing danger personally. This was the way. Strength earned respect. Courage earned obedience. She found him in a small storage room off the main corridor. He was young for a human, maybe 30 years old by their counting. His brown hair was messy and covered with dust. Blood ran down his left arm from a deep cut near his shoulder. His uniform was torn and dirty. An empty rifle lay on the ground beside him. In his right hand, he held only a combat knife. Stopped and looked at him. He looked back at her. There was no fear in his brown eyes. There was only determination, hard and bright like a flame that refused to die. "Surrender," she said. "You cannot win this fight." The human did not speak. Instead, he charged at her. Had fought thousands of enemies. She had killed warriors from dozens of species. She knew exactly how this would end. The human was wounded, tired, and armed with a simple blade. She was fresh, armored, and trained since birth in the art of combat. She caught his wrist as he swung the knife toward her throat. Her grip was strong enough to crush bone, but she held back. She wanted to see his face when he realized how hopeless his situation was. She wanted to watch the fight drain out of his eyes. But it did not drain out. He twisted his body and kicked at her legs. He pulled against her grip with all his strength. The knife slipped free and clattered to the floor, but he did not stop. He swung his fist at her face. He tried to bite her arm. He fought like a wild animal caught in a trap. During the struggle, his wounded arm pressed against her face. Blood smeared across her lips, hot and wet. Without thinking, she tasted it on her tongue. And everything changed. A warmth spread through her body like fire and sunlight mixed together. Her muscles went weak. Her thoughts became cloudy and confused. The storage room seemed to spin around her. She heard her own heartbeat pounding in her ears, faster and faster. The human pulled free from her weakened grip. He grabbed his knife and ran deeper into the building, disappearing into the smoke and shadows. Did not chase him. She could not move. She stood frozen in place, her hands still raised in the position where she had held him. "Commander," her guard captain appeared in the doorway. "Are you injured?" She heard his voice from very far away. The taste of blood lingered on her tongue, sweet and strange and terrifying. She did not understand what was happening to her. In 300 years of life, she had never felt anything like this. "Commander." She turned slowly to face him. Her hand trembled, her voice shook. "Find out his name," she said. "The human who escaped, find out everything about him." The captain looked confused but did not question her order. He bowed and left to carry out her command. That night, alone in her quarters aboard the flagship, sat in darkness and tried to understand. She touched her lips where his blood had touched them. She closed her eyes and saw his face, his brown eyes, his stubborn refusal to give up. Something inside her had broken, or perhaps something had awakened. She did not know which. The next morning, her officers reported that the colony was fully conquered. The survivors were being processed for labor camps. The resistance was crushed. Victory was complete. Listened to their reports without really hearing them. She looked down at the world below, the burning fields and broken buildings, and she thought only of him. Jake Harding, that was his name, a simple human soldier, nobody important. Then why could she not stop thinking about him? "Order the fleet to hold position," she said suddenly. Her officers stared at her in surprise. "Commander, the schedule requires us to proceed to the next target system." Turned her crimson eyes to them, and they fell silent. "We stay here," she said, "until I say otherwise." She did not explain why. She did not understand it herself. She only knew that she could not leave. Not yet. Not until she understood what this human had done to her. In the silence of her mind, a whisper repeated over and over. "What have you done to me?" 5 days passed and could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face. Brown eyes staring back at her without fear, blood on her lips, the taste of him spreading through her body like warm water. She would wake up gasping, her sheets wet with sweat, her hearts beating so fast they hurt. She told herself it was nothing. She told herself she was tired from the conquest. She told herself that she would feel normal again soon. But normal did not come. The strange feeling only grew stronger. On the 6th day, she sent for High Physician. He was old, even by standards, with faded scales and cloudy eyes, but his mind remained sharp. He had served the fleet for over 2 centuries and knew more about biology than anyone alive. He arrived at her quarters carrying a medical scanner and a bag of instruments, stood by the window watching the ruined colony below. Smoke still rose from the destroyed buildings. Somewhere down there, Jake Harding was hiding. She could feel it. She could not explain how she knew, but she was certain of it. "You called for me, Commander," said. Did not turn around. "I need information about human biology, everything we know." Set down his equipment and tilted his head. "Humans are a simple species, Commander, warm-blooded mammals, average of 80 years. Standard carbon-based biology. They are not particularly strong or fast or intelligent. The only notable thing about them is their persistence. What about their blood? The old physician paused. Their blood, Commander. Finally turned to face him. She saw the concern in his eyes. She knew she looked terrible. Her scales had lost their shine. Dark circles surrounded her crimson eyes. Her hands shook slightly when she moved them. I was exposed to human blood during the assault, she said carefully. I need to know if there are any medical effects I should be aware of. Studied her for a long moment. Then he opened his medical bag and took out a scanner. May I examine you, Commander? She nodded and stood still while he ran the device over her body. The scanner hummed and beeped. Its expression changed from curious to worried to something that looked almost like fear. Commander, he said slowly, how exactly were you exposed to this blood? It touched my lips. I may have ingested a small amount. The scanner beeped again, read the results, and his face went pale. Sit down, Commander, please. Did not like the tone of his voice. She sat on the edge of her sleeping platform and waited. The physician pulled up a chair across from her and held the scanner in his lap like a shield. What I am about to tell you must never leave this room, he said. Do you understand? Speaker took a deep breath. Human blood contains a unique combination of proteins and chemical compounds. Most of these are harmless to our kind, but there is one element that interacts with neural chemistry in a very specific way. What way? It triggers the bonding response. Felt the room spin around her. She gripped the edge of the sleeping platform to steady herself. That is impossible. The bonding response only occurs between chosen mates. That was our assumption, said. We were wrong. The bonding response is not triggered by another. It is triggered by a specific chemical signature in blood. Human blood happens to contain this signature in very high concentrations. No, whispered. No, that cannot be true. I am sorry, Commander. The scanner results are clear. Your neural pathways have been altered. The bond is forming as we speak. Within a few more days, it will be permanent. Stood up suddenly. Her chair fell backward and crashed to the floor. She paced across the room like a caged animal, her mind racing, her thoughts tumbling over each other. The bonding response was sacred among her people. It was the deepest connection two could share. Bonded pairs could feel each other's emotions. They could sense each other's presence across vast distances. They became two halves of one soul. The bond lasted until death and could never be broken. And she had accidentally triggered it with a human, an enemy, a prey animal. Can it be stopped? She demanded. Can you reverse it? Shook his head slowly. Once begun, the process cannot be undone. It is written into our deepest biology. Even if we killed the human, the effects on you would remain. You would feel his death as if it were your own. Many have died from the shock of losing a bonded partner. Stopped packing. She stared at the wall without seeing it. Her entire life she had been a weapon of the Empire. She had never wanted a bonded partner. She had never wanted anything except victory and conquest. And now her body had betrayed her in the worst possible way. Who else knows about this? She asked quietly. Only me, Commander, and I will take this knowledge to my grave. See that you do. Turn to face him. If anyone learns of this, I will be executed. You understand that? Nodded. The High Council would see this as corruption, as weakness. They would never allow a bonded commander to continue serving. And the fact that your bond is to a human. He trailed off and shook his head. I would be killed slowly, finished, as an example to others. Yes, Commander. Silence filled the room. Walked back to the window and looked down at the burning world below. Somewhere in those mountains, Jake Harding was alive. She could feel his heartbeat like a distant echo of her own. She could sense his fear and his anger and his desperate hope. She hated him for what he had done to her. She hated herself for being weak enough to let it happen. She hated the universe for creating such a cruel joke. But underneath the hatred, there was something else, something warm and soft and terrifying. She wanted to see him again. "Leave me," she said and remember your promise." The old physician gathered his equipment and left without another word, remained at the window, alone with her thoughts, watching the smoke rise from the conquered colony. In the reflection of the glass, she saw her own face, the face of a conqueror, the face of a monster, but something in her eyes had changed. There was a crack in the armor now, a weakness that had not existed before. "You are my downfall," she whispered to the absent human. "You have destroyed me without even trying." She pressed her hand against the cold glass. Somewhere beyond the smoke and flames, she knew he was out there, running and hiding and fighting to survive. He did not know what had happened. He did not know that his blood had created an unbreakable chain between them. But he would learn, soon enough he would learn. Because could not stay away from him. The bond pulled at her constantly, like a hook buried deep in her chest. She needed to find him. She needed to understand why this had happened. She needed to look into his brown eyes again and see if the feeling was as strong as she remembered. She called her guard captain to her quarters. "Find me everything about the human resistance on this planet," she ordered. "Every hiding place, every camp, every leader. I want to know where they are and what they are planning." The captain bowed. "At once, Commander. Are we preparing a final assault?" Did not answer for a long moment. Then she smiled, a cold and bitter expression that held no joy. "Something like that," she said. "Now go." After he left, she turned back to the window. The twin suns of this system were setting, painting the sky in shades of red and orange. It looked like blood. Everything reminded her of blood now. She touched her lips again, remembering the taste. Her downfall had begun, and she could not stop it. 3 weeks after the conquest, descended to the planet alone. Her officers thought she was conducting a personal inspection of the occupied territories. Her guards thought she was hunting for sport, as many commanders did on conquered worlds. No one suspected the truth. No one could have imagined that the great commander was being pulled across mountains and frozen valleys by an invisible thread tied to a human soldier. The bond had grown stronger every day. She could feel Jake hardening like a second heartbeat in her chest. She knew when he was awake and when he slept. She could sense his emotions as clearly as her own. Fear, anger, determination, a fierce will to survive that burned like a small sun in the darkness. The human resistance had retreated to the northern mountains after the fall of the colony. Her scouts reported that several hundred survivors had gathered there, hiding in abandoned mining tunnels and natural caves. They were cold and hungry and running low on supplies. They could not hold out much longer. But Jake Harding was among them, and as long as he lived, could not rest. She landed her shuttle in a frozen valley and continued on foot. The cold did not bother her, could survive in temperatures that would kill most species. She moved through the snow like a shadow, following the pull of the bond toward its source. It took her 2 days to find the resistance camp. It was hidden in a network of caves deep inside the mountains, protected by guards and traps and narrow passages that could be defended by a handful of soldiers. A smart choice for such a desperate situation. She watched the camp from a ridge above, studying the movements of the humans below. They had organized themselves well. Guards patrolled in regular shifts. Supply runs left the camp at random intervals to avoid detection. The wounded were treated in a medical cave near the back. It was a small army, broken but not defeated. And at the center of it all was Jake Harding. She spotted him on the second evening, emerging from a command tent with 2 other soldiers. He looked different than she remembered. His wound had healed, leaving a scar on his arm. His face was thinner, hardened by weeks of survival. But his eyes were the same, brown and bright and full of stubborn fire. The bond surged inside her like a wave crashing against rocks. She gripped a stone to steady herself. Every part of her wanted to run down the mountain and stand before him, to touch him, to speak to him, to understand why his blood had changed her so completely. But she was still commander. She was still a conqueror of worlds. She could not simply walk into an enemy camp and announce her feelings. The humans would kill her on sight, or try to, and even if they failed, her actions would betray her secret to her own people. So she waited, she watched, she learned. On the third night, her patience was rewarded. Jake left the camp alone after midnight. He carried a small pack and a rifle and walked north into a narrow canyon, followed him at a distance, moving silently through the shadows. She did not know where he was going or why he had left the safety of the camp, but the bond pulled her forward and she could not resist. The canyon ended at a collapsed mining tunnel. Jake disappeared inside, waited several minutes, then followed. The tunnel was dark and filled with rubble. She moved carefully, stepping over broken supports and fallen rocks. The air smelled of dust and old metal. Somewhere ahead, she could hear Jake's footsteps echoing off the walls. She found him in a small chamber at the end of the tunnel. He had started a fire using old mining supplies and sat beside it, eating from a sealed ration pack. His rifle lay across his lap, ready for use. When stepped into the firelight, he grabbed the weapon and pointed it at her in one smooth motion. His finger rested on the trigger. His eyes were wide with shock. "Don't move," he said. His voice was calm despite the fear she could feel through the bond. Raised her hand slowly. "I am not here to fight you." "Then why are you here?" He did not lower the rifle. "How did you find this place? How did you find me?" These were good questions, questions she did not know how to answer. The truth was too strange, too impossible. He would never believe it. "I hunted you," she said simply. "You are the one who escaped me during the conquest, the one who wounded me." "I didn't wound you. I barely touched you." "You did more than you know." Jake studied her face in the flickering firelight. She saw confusion in his expression, mixed with anger and curiosity. He was trying to understand why the commander of the invading army had tracked him personally across mountains and through frozen valleys. "If you wanted me dead, you could have sent soldiers," he said. "You could have bombed these mountains from orbit. Why come alone?" Lowered her hand slowly. "Because this is not about the war. This is about something else, something I do not fully understand myself." "You're not making sense." "No," she agreed, "I am not." Silence stretched between them. The fire crackled and popped. Outside the tunnel, wind howled through the canyon. Felt the bond pulsing inside her, warm and insistent, demanding that she move closer to him. She took a step forward. Jake's finger tightened on the trigger. "I told you not to move." "Shoot me if you must, but hear me first." He hesitated. That hesitation told her everything she needed to know. If he truly wanted her dead, he would have fired already. But something held him back. Perhaps curiosity. Perhaps something deeper that he did not understand any more than she did. "During our fight in the colony," began slowly, "your blood touched my lips. Among my people, this act has consequences that humans do not know about. Your blood created a connection between us, a bond that cannot be broken." Jake stared at her. "That's insane." "Yes, it is also true. You expect me to believe that you, a commander who has destroyed entire planets, are somehow connected to me because of some blood. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." Reached up and unclasped her armor. She let the chest piece fall to the ground, revealing the simple cloth beneath. Then she stepped closer into the light so he could see her clearly. "I have not slept properly since that day. I cannot eat without tasting you on my tongue. I feel your heartbeat inside my chest. When you are afraid, I feel your fear. When you are angry, your anger burns in my blood." Jake's hands trembled slightly. "Stop. My people would execute me if they knew. This bond is supposed to occur only between mates. It is sacred and permanent. and I have triggered it with an enemy, with a human, with you." I said stop. But she did not stop. She took another step forward, close enough now that the rifle barrel nearly touched her chest. "You asked me why I came alone," she said softly. "I came because I could not stay away. I came because you have ruined me, Jake Harding. You are my downfall, and I needed to look into your eyes and understand why." The rifle wavered. Jake's face was pale in the firelight. She could feel his confusion through the bond, his fear, and underneath it all something else. Something warm and unexpected. "This is a trick," he whispered. "This has to be a trick." "It is not." "Then what do you want from me?" Looked at him for a long moment. The fire cast dancing shadows across his face. He was just a human, just a soldier from a conquered world. He should have meant nothing to her. But he meant everything. "I do not know," she admitted. "I only know that I cannot destroy you, and I cannot destroy myself, so we must find another way." She stepped back and spread her arms wide, leaving herself open and defenseless. "The choice is yours, human. Kill me and end this madness, or lower your weapon and help me understand what we have become." Jake Harding looked at her. The bond hummed between them like a living thing. And slowly, very slowly, he lowered his rifle. Jake did not kill her that night in the cave. He could not explain why, not to himself, and certainly not to the other survivors when he returned to camp the next morning. Something in her crimson eyes had reached past his hatred and touched a place he had forgotten existed. They met again 3 nights later in the same collapsed tunnel, and again the night after that. Each time shared more of her people's secrets, fleet movements, supply routes, the names of commanders and the locations of vulnerable outposts, information that could save human lives. At first, Jake did not trust any of it. He tested her intelligence against what his scouts had already observed. Every detail matched. Every piece of information proved accurate. Either she was playing a game so complex he could not see its end, or she was telling the truth. The bond, she explained, worked both ways. He began to notice it during their 3rd meeting, a warmth in his chest when she was near, a strange awareness of her emotions flickering at the edge of his mind. When she felt pain, he felt an echo of it. When she felt hope, he sensed its brightness like distant sunlight. It should have terrified him. It did terrify him, but it also made lying impossible between them. He could feel when she spoke the truth, and she could feel the same from him. "Why are you doing this?" he asked her one night as they sat on opposite sides of a small fire. "You have conquered 100 worlds. What difference does one planet make?" Stared into the flames. The light made her silver scales glow like metal heated in a forge. "I have asked myself that question many times. I do not have a good answer." "Try." She was quiet for a long moment. "My people do not understand weakness. We do not allow it. From the moment I was born, I was trained to be a weapon. I was taught that feeling was failure, that connection was corruption. The bond was the only exception, the only place where two could be vulnerable with each other. And now you're bonded to me." "Yes, and through you I feel things I was never supposed to feel." She looked up at him, her crimson eyes reflecting the fire. "I feel your love for your people, your grief for those who died, your determination to protect those who remain. These emotions are like storms inside me. They shake everything I thought I knew." Jake understood more than he wanted to admit. He had begun to feel echoes of her experiences too. Centuries of loneliness wrapped in armor. A lifetime of conquest that brought no satisfaction. A hunger for something she could not name, could not find, until the moment his blood touched her lips. "My people have a word for this," he said quietly. "We call it empathy, the ability to feel what others feel." "Have no such word. We were told that other species were beneath us. Their pain did not matter. Their lives had no value except as resources to be consumed." Shook her head slowly. "I believed this for 300 years. Now I am not sure what I believe." They talked until dawn began to lighten the sky, then disappeared back to her shuttle, and Jake returned to the resistance camp with new intelligence that would save dozens of lives. The alliance grew from there. Jake brought another soldier into their secret meetings, a communications officer named Lisa Graham. She was practical and careful and did not trust at all, but she recognized the value of having a commander as a source, and she helped establish secure channels for passing information between them. Within weeks, the human resistance on New Horizon transformed from a desperate survival effort into a coordinated military operation. Ambushes targeted supply convoys at exactly the right moments. Attacks hit outposts when their defenses were weakest. Prisoners were rescued from labor camps using guard rotation schedules that only a senior commander would know. The occupation began to stumble. So officers grew concerned. How did the humans know so much? How were they striking so precisely? Suspicion spread through the fleet like a disease, but no one suspected their commander. No one could imagine that she had turned against everything she had ever served. Meanwhile, the bond continued to deepen. Jake found himself thinking about at strange moments, during meals, during strategy meetings, during the quiet hours before sleep. He would feel her presence like a gentle pressure in his mind, and he knew she was thinking about him too. One night after a successful raid that freed 50 human prisoners, they met in their usual place. Jake was still riding the high of victory. His people were fighting back. They were winning battles that should have been impossible. Hope had returned to New Horizon. "Thank you," he said too. "What you've done, the risks you've taken. I never thought I would say this to one of your kind, but thank you." She looked at him with an expression he could not read. "I did not do it for gratitude." "Then why?" "You know why." He did know. He felt it through the bond, a warmth that had nothing to do with strategy or alliance or the war between their peoples. She had done it because she could not bear to cause him more pain. She had done it because his happiness had become her happiness, his grief her grief. "This is crazy," Jake said softly. "You're an alien, you've killed thousands of people, I should hate you." "Do you?" He wanted to say yes. He tried to say yes, but the bond would not let him lie. "No," he admitted, "I don't, and I don't understand it." Reached out and touched his hand. Her scales were cool and smooth against his skin. A shock ran through him at the contact, as if a circuit had been completed. "My people say that the bond makes two souls one," she said. "I used to think it was superstition. Now I understand. Your soul has mixed with mine. We are not two separate beings anymore." "That should scare me." "It scares me too." They sat together in silence, her hand still resting on his. The fire burned low between them. Outside the cave, the wind carried the sound of distant gunfire. The war continued. People on both sides were still dying. But in that moment, none of it mattered. There was only the warmth of the bond, the connection that had formed against all logic and all expectation. A conqueror and a soldier, an alien and a human, two people who should have been enemies, finding something neither had ever experienced before. "What happens now?" Jake asked. Looked toward the cave entrance, where the first light of dawn was beginning to appear. "My fleet cannot stay here forever. The High Council will demand progress. They will send inspectors or worse, replacement commanders. When that happens, everything we have built will be discovered. So we need to end this before then." "Yes, one way or another." Jake felt her fear through the bond. Not fear for herself, but fear for him. Fear of what would happen to the survivors of New Horizon if she was exposed. Fear that her downfall would drag him down with her. "There might be a way," he said slowly. "Something I've been thinking about, but it would require you to give up everything. Your rank, your fleet, your entire life." "Tell me." He told her about the resistance network that existed beyond New Horizon. Other colonies fighting back against occupation. Underground cells communicating in secret, sharing intelligence and resources. A growing movement that needed exactly what could provide. "If you gave us everything you know," he said, "it could change the entire war, not just here but across every human world they have touched." Was quiet for a long time. The dawn light grew stronger, turning the cave walls from black to gray. Finally, she looked at him with something new in her crimson eyes. "You are asking me to betray my entire species." "Yes." "You are asking me to destroy 300 years of service." "Yes." "You are asking me to become your ally in a war against my own people." "Yes, I'm asking you to choose." She looked at him, he looked at her. The bond hummed between them, carrying emotions too complex for words. Then smiled, a strange and beautiful expression on her face. "It seems my downfall is complete," she said, "and I find that I do not mind." She took his hand and held it tight. "Tell me what you need to know. I will give you everything." The betrayal came faster than anyone expected. Transmitted everything she knew through the resistance network. Military codes, defense protocols, the location of the central command station hidden in the outer reaches of the galaxy, fleet weaknesses and political divisions within the High Council. 3 centuries of knowledge poured out in a matter of days, spreading through secret channels to every human colony still fighting for survival. But secrets have a way of being discovered. Grand Admiral arrived at New Horizons 6 weeks after transmissions began. His battle fleet darkened the sky with warships, each one bristling with weapons capable of destroying cities. Had Bent's mentor once, long ago. He had trained her in the art of conquest. He had watched her rise through the ranks and become one of the Empire's greatest commanders. Now he had come to execute her. "The High Council knows of your treachery," his message said, broadcast across all frequencies. "You have betrayed your blood, your people, and your oath. Surrender yourself for judgment, or watch this planet burn to ash." Received the transmission aboard her flagship, surrounded by officers who had only just learned the truth about their commander. Some looked at her with hatred. Others looked confused, uncertain whether to draw their weapons or flee. None of them understood what had happened to her. None of them could comprehend the bond that had transformed her soul. "Clear the bridge," she ordered calmly. "This fight is not yours." They left. Some went to join forces. Others simply disappeared into escape pods, wanting no part of what was coming. Did not blame them. They were soldiers following their training. They had not been changed the way she had been changed. When the bridge was empty, she opened a channel to the planet below. "Jake," she said, "he is here." Through the bond, she felt his response. Fear mixed with determination, the same fire that had burned in his eyes when he faced her with nothing but a knife. "I know," he said, "we're ready." "Ready for what? His fleet outnumbers yours 20 to 1. You cannot win a direct battle." "We don't need to win. We just need to survive long enough." "Long enough for what?" Jake's voice was steady. "Long enough for your intelligence to reach the other colonies. Long enough for them to strike at the targets you identified. Long enough for the Empire to realize that this war has changed." Closed her eyes. Through the bond, she could feel what he was feeling. Hope. Desperate, stubborn, impossible hope. The same hope that had kept his people fighting when any rational species would have surrendered. "They will kill you," she said softly, "will not show mercy." "Then we die fighting. That's what humans do." She felt tears forming in her eyes, did not cry. They were not supposed to be capable of such weakness, but she was not purely anymore. She was something new, something created by a bond she had never asked for and could not escape. "I am coming down," she said, "to fight beside you." "No, you're more valuable up there. Your ship can cause chaos in its fleet. You can buy us time." "I do not want time. I want to be with you." The bond pulsed between them, carrying emotions that words could not express. Love, fear, defiance, a connection so deep that distance could not weaken it. After this is over, Jake said quietly, we'll have time, I promise. Gripped the arms of her command chair. She wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. Do not die, human, she said fiercely. That is an order. Since when do I take orders from you? Despite everything, she smiled. Since the moment I became your downfall. The channel closed, turned to face the viewport where his fleet was forming into attack position. She had spent her entire life learning how to destroy enemies. Now she would use that knowledge to save the people she had once tried to conquer. She activated her ship's weapon systems and aimed them at the flagship of her former mentor. Forgive me, old friend, she whispered. I have found something worth more than empire. Then she opened fire. The battle that followed would become legend among the human colonies. A single warship, turning against its own fleet, creating chaos and confusion at a critical moment. Forces were forced to split their attention, engaging the traitor while also trying to assault the planet below. Meanwhile, on the surface, the human resistance fought with everything they had. Ships that should not have been able to fly took to the sky, armed with stolen weapons and guided by perfect intelligence about enemy weaknesses. Soldiers who should have died stood their ground against overwhelming odds. And everywhere they attacked, they found humans waiting for them, prepared, organized, dangerous. The battle lasted 18 hours. When the sun rose over New Horizon again, the sky was filled with wreckage from both sides. Its flagship drifted dead in orbit, its command deck destroyed by a final desperate attack from ship. The Grand Admiral himself had died believing that the universe had gone mad. Perhaps it had. On the surface, Jake Harding stood in the ruins of what had once been a forward base. His rifle was empty. His body was covered in wounds and burns and blood that was not entirely his own. Around him, the surviving members of his resistance force were helping the injured and counting the dead. They had won. Against all odds, against all logic, they had won. A shuttle descended through the smoke and debris, landing on the scorched ground nearby. Jake turned to watch it, his hand resting on his weapon out of habit. The hatch opened. Emerged. She looked worse than he did. Her armor was cracked and melted in places. Her silver scales were darkened by burns. She walked with a limp, leaning against the shuttle's frame for support, but she was alive. The bond sang between them like a living thing. Jake crossed the distance in a few quick steps. He caught her as she stumbled, wrapping his arms around her to hold her upright. She leaned into him, her weight pressing against his chest, her breath warm against his neck. You were supposed to stay in orbit, he said. I never follow orders. You should know that by now. Around them, the surviving resistance fighters stared in shock. Their greatest enemy, holding their leader like a lover. The universe truly had gone mad. But Jake did not care what they thought. He did not care about anything except the woman in his arms, the alien who had crossed the stars to destroy his world and ended up destroying herself instead. Is it over? He asked quietly. Lifted her head to look at him. Her crimson eyes were tired but bright. The war is not over. The Empire will send more fleets. They will want revenge for what we have done here. So we keep fighting. Yes, but now they will fight us differently. Now they know that humans are not prey. Now they know that anyone can be changed. She touched his face with her scaled hand, gentle despite the hardness of her fingers. You have shown them that downfall is not destruction. It is transformation. Jake held her closer. The bond hummed between them, warm and steady, connecting two souls that should never have met. What do we do now? He asked. Smiled. It was still a strange expression on her face, but it was becoming more natural with each passing day. Now we rest, we heal, we rebuild, and when the Empire comes again, we face them together. Together, Jake repeated. She pressed her forehead against his, a gesture that meant something deep and sacred among her people. A promise, a commitment, a bond that could never be broken. "You were right," she whispered. "You are my downfall, but I was wrong about what that meant." "What does it mean?" "It means ending. It means dying to become something new." She pulled back to look into his brown eyes, the eyes that had first refused to show fear when he faced her in the ruins of his colony. "My old self is dead. Everything I was, everything I believed burned away in the fire of this bond. What remains is something different, something better." Jake understood. He felt the same transformation in himself. The hatred he had carried, the rage and grief and desire for revenge, all of it had been burned away too. What remained was hope, and love, and a future that neither of them could have imagined. "Then we are both new," he said, "both changed, both free." Above them the smoke was clearing. Through gaps in the clouds they could see stars beginning to appear. Somewhere out there, human colonies were receiving intelligence. Somewhere out there, the war was shifting in ways the Empire could not predict. And here, on the surface of a planet that had been destroyed and reborn, a conqueror and a soldier stood together. Two souls made one. Two people who had found each other across the vastness of space and the gulf of species and culture and war. Downfall had become salvation. And the universe would never be the same.